So the last thing we want to look at has to do with actually connecting into your virtual machines. So now that we're getting a little bit oriented to the Hyper-V Manager console, how do we actually connect in and interact with a guest operating system? So let's take a look at that. So here we are again in our Hyper-V management console, and we can see our various different virtual machines here. If you want to connect into a virtual machine, you can simply double-click it, or you can right-click and choose Connect. That opens up what's known as the VMRC control, or the Virtual Machine Connection. And it's using an underlying RDP-based protocol. We can use this remotely, as long as all the right ports are open. But this is a tool then that gets us connected, and so then I can interact with this guest operating system. Right? So this would be the system itself inside. Now, the VMRC has options for us, such as we can hit Control-Alt-Delete right here, which brings up obviously the Control-Alt-Delete window on that particular screen. Let me cancel that. Although the one thing you might want to take note of is if you go to the Action menu and Control-Alt-Delete, you can learn what the shortcut keys are. So you'll notice with Hyper-V, the Control-Alt shortcut key here is Control-Alt-End. So that would be the shortcut key as opposed to having to hit that button every time. We also have buttons here to have shortcuts to things like turning off the virtual machine, shutting it down, or saving it, pausing it, resetting it, right? That's the same as hitting the reset button on your computer. We can also take snapshots. We've got various different buttons, and then we've got our menu. So from the File menu, we can get to our settings. So these are the same virtual machine settings we were looking at, although now notice some of them are grayed out because right now the virtual machine is not running. So you can still get to them. If I were to power down this virtual machine, this window wouldn't automatically close. It might still be open. It would just be in a powered down state. In fact, let me show you what that looks like with the one that we created earlier. If I connect to it, here's a virtual machine connection. It's just telling me it's turned off. So obviously we'd need to power it on here. But if I look at the settings from there, for that virtual machine, these are not grayed out. So it's just another way of getting at those settings. We can make changes and commit them, and then I could power it on after I made my changes. So the virtual machine connection, going back to the one that's up and running, on the Action menu, we've got a few things. That's obviously some of those buttons, like shutting it down. We can take snapshots. If I click Snapshot, it pops up a window. It's a little bit different, gives me the ability to specify a name for the snapshot. But we go into snapshots in more detail in a later chapter. But then notice at the bottom of the Action menu, insert the Integration Services Setup disk. This is going to be a very important step for you every time you install a new guest operating system. This actually is what it's doing is it's inserting an ISO image or an ISO CD. And in fact, if we click on the Media menu here, this is where we can insert other ISO images. But notice the ISO image is called vmguest.iso. And it has inserted it, and it's prompting me now at startup to install the integration services. So if I click that, now this happens to be a virtual machine where they're already installed on this version of Windows, so it's fine. But that's how you would get it installed into a virtual machine or a guest operating system that does not already have the integration components installed. Windows Server 2008 Release 2 will, whenever you build a guest operating system that has that, it'll already have the integration components. So that's nice. But if you're installing like Windows Server 2003, you're installing Windows Vista, or something like that in your guest operating system, you have to do that step to install the very, very important integration components. And that's where you find them, right there. Then under Media, this is where obviously we can insert or eject ISO images, right, or also floppy images. So we can insert a disk here, and if we do that, it's going to pop up and I need to browse the host system for what I'm looking for is a VFD file. If I do a DVD drive, I can either capture the physical DVD drive of the host system, and now I'm reading that disk, or I can, of course, insert an ISO image, and I'll browse now for the ISO file. So this is just another way to do it. Remember in the settings, if I go File, Settings, you would see here under DVD drive, this is where I could specify to capture the physical disk, or to mount an image. So either way, this is just a shortcut to do it. Under clipboard, we can either capture the screen using a Control-C, or we can type clipboard text into the system. So if we've taken text from the host system, we can type that into the guest VM using that option. And then we can put this in full screen or get some help. So that's the virtual machine connection. This is how you interface with your guest operating systems. So the only thing to really be aware of in there, that's not the only thing, but one of the main things to be aware of, is that's where you got to go in order to install the integration components. You'll find it within that VMRC connection.